first drink of vodka is like the final examination at a school of sword swallowing. Hello and welcome to My Tiny Bottles, the project where I'm exploring my grandmother's legacy of miniature liquor bottles, one tiny bottle at a time. I'm your host, Tammy Coxon. It's January 1942. The U.S. has recently entered World War II, and Clear Spring Distilling Company, a Jim Beam subsidiary, has just released a brand new product. It's called Dark Eyes Vodka, and bottle 126 is Grandma's tiny bottle of it. Hers is from the 1980s, but World War II was really influential on vodka's ascendancy in the United States, and echoes of that kept coming up as I researched this tiny bottle. One of the questions I had when I was researching this bottle was, why would Jim Beam make vodka in 1942? The answer is probably bottle 50, Smirnoff. As I talked about in that episode, a Russian emigre named Rudolf Kunet started manufacturing and distributing Smirnoff in the U.S. in 1933. But America in the 1930s had no idea what to do with this colorless and mostly flavorless liquid, so by the end of the decade, his company was floundering. In 1938, John Martin, president of Hubline Inc., bought the company. Hubline was a small company at the time, and in many ways it was vodka that made it a giant of the industry for a while, mostly thanks to John Martin's marketing genius. In my Smirnoff episode, I tell the famous story about him creating and marketing the Moscow Mule, but that mostly happened after World War II. The brand's marketing buzz in the late 30s and early 40s was inspired by the lack of proper caps for the vodka bottles. The only ones they had said whiskey on them, so an enterprising distributor in South Carolina started using the tagline, Smirnoff White Whiskey, no smell, no taste. As Martin said in a newspaper interview, it was strictly illegal, but it was also working, with sales jumping from 10 to 50 to 500 cases in a short time. I assume this is what the folks at Jim Beam were thinking about when they decided to launch their own vodka brand. But they might have had political reasons too. Vodka was very much a Russian-coded product, with Smirnoff playing up its historic connection to the Tsars and the Russian imperial court. But the Tsars were gone, and the communists and the Soviet Union were in their place. My research on vodka in the 1940s turned up a great piece from The Tablet, a Brooklyn, New York Catholic newspaper. In November 1940, an article entitled The Vodka Flows describes the vodka diplomacy that was going on as the world waited to see what the Soviet Union would do in World War II. The flow of vodka at the Soviet embassy in Washington is a safe thermometer to measure the warmth or coolness of administration feelings towards Soviet Russia, it begins. In the prior year, the article reported the temperature was near zero after the Soviet Union had signed a non-aggression pact with Germany and followed that up with the bloody conquest and invasion of Poland, Finland, and the Baltic states. But a year later, things were different. Now the Soviet Union has become the great enigma in the international chess game of power politics. Finland is forgotten. More than 900 people attended the 2-hour reception, shaking hands with the Russian ambassador and drinking vodka and Russian champagne. In June 1941, Hitler broke the non-aggression pact and invaded Russia, and the Soviet Union joined the Allies. Maybe that's part of why vodka started flowing from American distilleries and into American glasses. A July 1941 column from Henry McElmore related that sales of vodka in London West End bars had jumped 100%, that dance bands had started playing the Volga Boatmen, and that red neckties were once again in good taste. In the hilarious column, he worries that Americans will follow in the Brits' footsteps, and this will not go well, since we are a nation of belters, sluggers, bottoms-uppers, down-the-hatchers, and you-can't-fly-on-one-wingers. In the interest of preparing his readers, he sampled some vodka. It went about as well as you'd expect. The first drink of vodka is like the final examination at a school of sword swallowing. The dictionary says vodka is made from rye, but that's the biggest lie Noah Webster ever told. The base of it is live coals. America did follow England, and through World War II, Dark Eyes Vodka was there, appearing in newspaper ads alongside imported Cuban rum and Spanish brandy and blended American whiskey. Blends because on November 1st, 1942, almost all U.S. distilleries were shifted to wartime production, and the distilleries began mixing their limited supplies of straight whiskey with neutral spirits to make it last. This raises another question. Where was the vodka coming from? Because one of the important timing elements of the Smirnoff Moscow Mule story is that they couldn't make any vodka during the war. I guess Clear Spring Distilling must have made a lot of it before the ban went into place and took advantage of the brief hiatus in 1943 to distill some more. While it was selling, it still wasn't popular, and a 1944 newspaper article described a gift combination in a liquor store that linked two of the Allies in strange bondage, with a fifth of Old Grandad bourbon tied to a bottle of Dark Eyes Vodka, which of course was fully American, but bearing a label complete with text with Russian characters and imagery. Marketing American-made vodka with an aura of Russianness got more complicated in the post-war period, as the U.S. entered into the Cold War with the Soviet Union. In 1950, New York bartenders announced a Moscow Mule boycott. But by then, vodka was hot, driven by mostly a generational switch. No one ever wants to drink what their parents drank. Vodka was able to continue the Russian mystique in their marketing by hearkening back to the czars and the Russian imperial court, conveniently ignoring communism. Then, as the baby boomers came of age, drinking something that felt Russian could be a little defiant and countercultural, too. In 1972, Stoli was launched in the US and leaned really hard into that angle. It was an actual Russian vodka, and they came out with a series of ads with pictures of US-made vodka bottles labeled with where they were made, and then a tagline pointing out that most American vodkas seem Russian, but Stoli actually was. Dark Eyes wasn't an important enough brand to make it into the ads, but they were still around. Parent company Jim Beam was very into decanters at the time, and in the 1970s, Dark Eyes was released in a variety of decorative decanters for the holidays, as well as in its regular packaging. Grandma's bottle of Dark Eyes is from the 1980s. The label on it matches the one from their 1973 trademark renewal and is different from the 1992 one, but it's a plastic bottle, and that wasn't legal in the US until 1981. As I now know to expect from 40-year-old plastic bottles, it is very evaporated, and almost certainly all that's left in this half-empty bottle is water. So not an exciting one to taste, but I really did have a lot of fun diving deeper into the history around vodka and the war. If you've got a Dark Eyes Vodka story to share or some fun vodka history, I'd love to hear about it. Drop a comment below or on mytinybottles.com. Like and share while you're down there. You'll also find me at social media at mytinybottles on Instagram and Facebook or at TammyLC on Blue Sky. Cheers!